The massive Zalari transport ship limped through Earth's outer atmosphere, its hull scarred by plasma burns and meteor impacts. Captain Thane watched the blue world grow larger on his view screen and felt his 4 hearts sink. This was their last hope, a primitive planet whose inhabitants had barely learned to leave their own solar system. "Sir, we're receiving communication attempts from the surface," reported Communications Officer Vex, her scaled fingers dancing over alien controls. "Multiple frequencies, multiple languages. They're trying to help us land safely." Thane's mandibles clicked in confusion. The intelligence reports said humans were violent, territorial creatures who could barely cooperate within their own species. Yet here they were, guiding a massive alien vessel to safety without even knowing who was aboard. "Accept their guidance," Thane ordered. His ship carried 40,000 Zalari civilians, the last survivors of the Korvac invasion that had destroyed their homeworld 3 months ago. Men, women, children, elderly, all that remained of a civilization that had once spanned 17 star systems. The human air traffic controllers were remarkably efficient. Their primitive radio technology shouldn't have been able to coordinate something this complex. Yet they managed the landing with precision that impressed even Thane's veteran crew. The transport touched down in what the humans called the Mojave Desert, creating a crater from its massive bulk. Within minutes, vehicles began approaching from all directions. Thane tensed, expecting military forces, weapons, demands for surrender. Instead, he watched in amazement as trucks arrived loaded with water containers, medical equipment, and what appeared to be temporary shelters. "Sir," Vex said, her voice filled with wonder. "They're asking about our medical needs. They want to know if we require specific atmospheric conditions, if we have wounded, if our children need immediate care." Thane stared at the view screen. Children. The humans were asking about children first. The first human to board their ship was a woman wearing white clothing with a Red Cross symbol. She had brown skin and kind eyes that immediately put the Zalari crew at ease. Through a hastily assembled translation device, she introduced herself as Dr. Sarah Chen. "We're here to help," she said simply. "How many are hurt? How many need immediate medical attention?" It was such a straightforward question, yet it left Thane speechless. In their travels across the galaxy, seeking refuge, they had encountered dozens of advanced civilizations. Most had turned them away immediately. A few had offered temporary shelter in exchange for their technology or labor. None had simply asked how to help. Dr. Chen moved through their ship with quiet efficiency, examining Zalari refugees with gentle hands and careful attention. She couldn't understand their physiology completely, but she observed, learned, and adapted her techniques in real time. When she found elderly Zalari suffering from a wasting disease caused by stress and malnutrition, she didn't hesitate to begin treatment with Earth medications modified for their biology. Outside, the human response was overwhelming. Military forces had arrived, not to threaten, but to provide logistics and security. Soldiers unloaded supplies and began constructing a temporary settlement with remarkable speed. Engineers studied the ship's environmental systems and immediately began building compatible facilities on the ground. But it was the civilians that amazed Thane most. They came by the thousands. Families driving pickup trucks loaded with blankets and food. Churches organizing supply drives. Schools collecting toys for Zalari children. Social media networks spreading information about what the refugees needed most. Within 6 hours, a tent city had sprouted in the desert. Not the grim, barely functional camps Thane had seen on other worlds, but an organized community with medical facilities, schools, recreation areas, and even spaces set aside for Zalari cultural practices. "I don't understand," Vex whispered as they watched human children playing with young Zalari, the language barrier meaningless to the universal games of childhood. "Their planet isn't even part of the Galactic Federation. They have no obligation to help us. They gain nothing from this." Thane watched an elderly human woman teaching a group of Zalari females how to use Earth cooking equipment, both sides laughing at the inevitable mistakes. "Perhaps that's exactly why they're helping," he said quietly. The human who seemed to be coordinating the massive relief effort was a tall man named James Morrison, who held some kind of governmental position with the United Nations. He spoke to Thane through the translation device with the same matter-of-fact kindness as Dr. Chen. "We've contacted our agricultural specialists," Morrison explained. "Your people eat different foods than we do. But our biochemists think they can modify Earth crops to meet your nutritional needs within a few weeks. In the meantime, we're synthesizing supplements based on the biological data your medical officer provided. You're doing this for strangers," Thane said, still struggling to comprehend the scope of human generosity. "Your species doesn't even know us. We could be dangerous." Morrison smiled, an expression that somehow translated across species barriers. "Could be. But you're not, are you? You're refugees. You're scared, tired, and far from home. That's all we need to know." The translation device couldn't convey the full meaning behind Morrison's words, but Thane felt their sincerity. These humans were helping not because they expected something in return, not because they were forced to, but because it was what they believed was right. As night fell on the first day, Thane stood outside his ship and watched the settlement taking shape. Solar panels powered LED lights that created a warm glow across the tent city. Humans and Zalari worked together to distribute supplies, share meals, and comfort frightened children. Music from both cultures drifted through the desert air. A young human approached him, a girl perhaps 12 years old with bright red hair and freckles. She held something in her hands and spoke in English. The translation device rendered her words. "My mom said you might be sad because you miss your home. I made this for you." She handed him a small object made of colored paper and string, clearly crafted by child's hands, but made with obvious care and love. Through the translator, she explained it was called origami, a traditional earth art form. She had folded the paper into the shape of a crane, which she said represented hope and healing. Thane accepted the gift with trembling hands. In Zalari culture, gifts between strangers were rare and formal affairs, exchanged only after careful negotiation. This child had given him something precious, simply because she thought he was sad. "Tell her," Thane said to the translator, his voice thick with emotion. "Tell her that in all my travels across the galaxy, I have never received a gift more valuable than this." The girl beamed and ran back to her parents, who smiled and waved at him from across the camp. Thane held the paper crane up to the starlight and felt something he hadn't experienced since the Korvac invasion began. Hope. Dr. Chen found him there an hour later, still staring at the small paper bird. "How are your people adapting?" she asked. "Better than I dared dream," Thane replied. "Your species is remarkable, Dr. Chen. We have encountered civilizations thousands of years older than yours, with technology that seems like magic compared to what humanity possesses. Yet none of them showed us the kindness we have received in a single day on Earth." Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment. "We have a saying on Earth. We are all made of star stuff. Maybe that's why it feels natural to help you. You're not really strangers. You're family we just hadn't met yet." That night, as Zalari families settled into their temporary homes and human volunteers maintained round-the-clock support stations, Thane sent his first report to the surviving Zalari colonies scattered across the galaxy. His message was simple but would soon spread throughout known space. "We have found sanctuary among the humans of Earth. They have shown us that advancement is not measured in technology or military might, but in the willingness to extend kindness to those who need it most. We are safe. We are welcomed. We are home." He had no way of knowing that his words would be the first ripple in a wave that would transform galactic politics forever. The galaxy was about to learn what humanity was truly capable of. Not in war, but in peace. Not in conquest, but in compassion. The paper crane sat on his desk as he composed the message, a small symbol of enormous change. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions about integration and coexistence. But tonight, 40,000 Zalari refugees slept safely under an alien sky, protected by the inexplicable kindness of a species the galaxy had barely begun to understand. The stars shone down on the desert camp, witness to the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. A refugee crisis solved not through reluctant duty or political calculation, but through genuine human warmth. The shockwaves from this simple act of decency were already beginning to spread across the cosmos, though no one yet understood their magnitude. In the distance, coyotes howled their ancient songs, welcoming the newest residents of Earth to the community of life under the western sky. 3 weeks after the landing, Ambassador Krell of the Galactic Federation arrived at Earth aboard the battlecruiser Times Dominion Asterisk. The Corvothian diplomat had traveled for months to reach this backwater system, expecting to find either a war zone or another failed refugee settlement. Instead, his sensors detected something impossible. A thriving community where 40,000 aliens lived peacefully alongside their human hosts. "Sir," reported his aide, Lieutenant Zara, "the humans are requesting permission to escort us to the surface. They say Captain Thane is eager to meet with Federation representatives." Krell's tentacles writhed in irritation. The humans are requesting? These primitives should be grateful we're even acknowledging their existence. He paused, studying the sensor readings. "Show me the refugee settlement." The holographic display materialized, revealing an organized city that had sprouted from the desert like a flower after rain. Permanent buildings now stood where tents had been 3 weeks ago. The architecture was a fascinating blend of human and Zalari design, functional Earth construction, enhanced with artistic elements from Zalari culture. Gardens grew in geometric patterns that held meaning in both civilizations. Children of both species played in carefully designed recreational areas. "This is impossible," Krell muttered. "Refugee settlements are temporary camps at best. They don't become this." He had overseen 17 refugee situations in his career. Each had followed the same pattern. Initial chaos, grudging acceptance, minimal resources, eventual resentment from the host population, and finally relocation to purpose-built colonies far from civilized worlds. The refugees were grateful for survival, but they never truly integrated, never found genuine welcome. Yet here was a settlement that looked like it was built to last forever. The human escort vessel that met them was a converted cargo ship crewed by military personnel and civilian volunteers. The captain was a woman named Lisa Rodriguez who greeted them with professional courtesy and genuine warmth. "Welcome to Earth," she said through the translation system. "Captain Thane has prepared a presentation about the integration project. We think you'll find it interesting." "Integration project?" Krell's translator struggled with the human concept. "We're not just housing your people temporarily," Rodriguez explained. "We're helping them build a new life here. Permanent citizenship, career opportunities, cultural exchange, the whole package." It turns out Zalari are incredibly good at sustainable agriculture, and we have farmers eager to learn their techniques. Krell's aide exchanged glances with her superior. This wasn't how refugee situations were supposed to work. The presentation took place in a building that perfectly embodied the human approach to the refugee crisis. The structure was clearly human engineering. Practical, efficient, and built quickly. But Zalari artists had decorated the walls with flowing murals that told the story of both species. The meeting room itself was designed to accommodate the different physical needs of multiple species, with adjustable seating, lighting, and atmospheric controls. Captain Thane had changed in the week since landing. He no longer carried the defeated posture of a refugee leader. Instead, he moved with the confidence of someone who had found hope again. Beside him sat Dr. Sarah Chen, James Morrison, and a woman Krell didn't recognize, Dr. Elena Vasquez, apparently an agricultural specialist. "Ambassador Krell," Thane began, "I want to thank you for coming. I have something to show the Federation that I think will change how we handle refugee crises across the galaxy." The presentation began with numbers that made Krell's mind reel. In 3 weeks, humans had constructed permanent housing for all 40,000 Zalari refugees. Not temporary shelters, but actual homes with individual privacy, family spaces, and community areas. The construction had been completed using a combination of human industrial capacity and Zalari craftsmanship techniques that created structures more beautiful and efficient than either species could have built alone. Medical integration had been equally remarkable. Dr. Chen had worked with Zalari healers to develop treatments that combined human technology with Zalari medicinal knowledge. The result was healthcare that was better for both species than what either had achieved alone. But the most significant development, Thane continued, is economic integration. Humans didn't just give us charity, they gave us opportunities to contribute. Dr. Vasquez stood up, her excitement obvious even through the translation system. The Zalari brought agricultural techniques we've never seen before. They can grow crops in desert conditions with 90% less water than our methods require. We're already planning to expand food production in areas we thought were unusable. And they're teaching us, added a human engineer named Robert Kim, who joined the presentation. Zalari architectural principles use structural harmonics that make buildings both stronger and more beautiful. We're applying their techniques to earthquake-resistant construction in vulnerable areas. Krell found himself leaning forward despite his skepticism. You're claiming these refugees are improving your civilization? Not claiming, Morrison said with a smile. Proving it. Our unemployment rate has actually dropped because the integration project created so many new jobs. Tourism is up because people from all over the world want to see the first human-alien community. Our universities have waiting lists of students who want to study Zalari science and culture. And our children, Dr. Chen added softly, are growing up bilingual in Zalari and human languages. They're learning that differences in appearance don't matter when you're playing soccer together or working on homework. The presentation continued with video footage that left Krell speechless. Human and Zalari teenagers working together in laboratories. Mixed sports teams competing in games that combined rules from both cultures. Zalari elders teaching human students ancient mathematical concepts, while human teachers showed young Zalari how to use Earth technology. Most striking were the interviews with both species. Humans consistently spoke about how much they were learning from their new neighbors. Zalari talked about feeling truly welcomed for the first time since leaving their homeworld. Children of both species played together with the unconscious ease of universal friendship. How? Krell finally asked. How did you achieve this level of integration in 3 weeks? The Federation has protocols for refugee situations that take years to implement. Morrison's expression grew serious. We didn't follow protocols, Ambassador. We followed our instincts. When we see people in need, we help them. When we see opportunities to learn from each other, we take them. When we see a chance to build something better together than either of us could build alone, we grab it with both hands. But surely there have been problems. Krell pressed. Cultural conflicts. Resource disputes. Integration difficulties. Of course, Dr. Chen acknowledged. Last week we had a major crisis when some Zalari families were accidentally served food that violated their religious dietary restrictions. It could have caused serious cultural offense. Krell nodded knowingly. Such incidents had sparked riots in other refugee situations. So what did you do? His aide asked. The human volunteers who made the mistake learned about Zalari dietary laws and redesigned the entire meal program to respect them, Thane replied. Then they asked Zalari cooks to teach them how to prepare traditional foods properly. Now we have fusion cuisine that both species love. 2. Krell's aide was taking furious notes. And resource allocation disputes? We vote on major decisions in community assemblies, Morrison explained. Humans and Zalari together. Equal representation. When people have a voice in decisions that affect them, they tend to support the outcome. Economic competition? We created cooperative businesses, Dr. Vasquez said. Human capital and industrial capacity, combined with Zalari knowledge and skills. Everyone profits when everyone contributes. The presentation concluded with a virtual tour of the settlement. Krell watched families of both species sharing meals in courtyards designed for social interaction. He saw workshops where humans and Zalari artisans created products that neither could have imagined alone. He observed schools where children learned from teachers of both species, becoming fluent in sciences and arts that transcended planetary boundaries. This is the future of refugee assistance, Thane concluded. Not temporary housing and minimal support until relocation becomes possible, but genuine integration that makes both communities stronger. That evening, Krell walked through the settlement with Morrison and Thane. The ambassador had intended this to be a formal inspection, but it became something more like a neighborhood tour. Families invited them into homes to share meals and conversation. Children showed off projects they were working on in integrated classrooms. Artists displayed works that blended human and Zalari aesthetic traditions. In the central plaza, a group of teenagers were performing music that combined human instruments with Zalari vocal harmonics. The result was unlike anything Krell had ever heard. Complex, beautiful, and entirely new. "Ambassador," Morrison said as they listened to the otherworldly music, "I have a question for you. In all your experience with refugee situations, how many ended with the refugees wanting to stay permanently with their host population?" Krell considered the question. "None. Refugees always want to return home or relocate to colonies with their own species. Integration is considered temporary at best." "And how many ended with the host population asking the refugees to stay permanently?" The ambassador's silence was answer enough. "We've been thinking about expanding the program," Morrison continued. "There are other refugee populations in the galaxy, aren't there? People displaced by wars and disasters who need homes? You want more refugees?" Krell asked in disbelief. "We want more neighbors," Morrison corrected gently. "The Zalari have taught us things about sustainable living, artistic expression, and community cooperation that we never would have learned on our own. They've made our world richer in every way that matters." A young Zalari approached them, carrying something in her hands. She spoke in accented but clear English. "Ambassador Krell, my grandmother asked me to give you this. She made it for you." The gift was a traditional Zalari piece weaving, a complex textile that incorporated threads from both Earth and Zalari materials. The pattern told a story of journey, loss, hope, and new beginnings. It would have taken days to create. "Why?" Krell asked, accepting the beautiful cloth with trembling hands. "Because you came to check on us," the girl replied simply. "Because you care about what happens to refugees. Grandmother says that makes you family." That night, Krell sent his report to the Federation Council. His message was longer than usual, detailed with observations and recommendations that would revolutionize galactic refugee policy. But it began with a simple statement that would echo through Federation halls for generations. "I have witnessed something unprecedented on Earth. Humans have not merely solved a refugee crisis. They have transformed it into an opportunity for mutual advancement. The integration of Zalari refugees has created a hybrid community that exceeds the capabilities of either species alone. This is not temporary charity, but permanent evolution." He paused in his writing, looking at the piece weaving hanging on his quarters wall. Tomorrow he would return to Federation space with news that would shake the foundations of galactic politics. Tonight, he listened to human Zalari music drifting up from the settlement below, and wondered why it had taken a supposedly primitive species to show the galaxy what was truly possible. The Shockwaves were building momentum. 6 months after Ambassador Krell's report reached Federation space, the galaxy was in upheaval. The Terran integration model, as it came to be known, had sparked the greatest political and social revolution in galactic history. High Chancellor Morvex, of the Federation Council, stood before the assembled representatives of 247 worlds, holding a datapad that contained the most shocking statistics ever compiled by Federation social scientists. "In the past 6 months," he announced to the hushed assembly, 17 different worlds have requested human advisors to help establish integration programs for their refugee populations. The preliminary results are unprecedented. The holographic display above the assembly hall showed a map of Federation space, with glowing indicators marking worlds that had implemented human-inspired refugee programs. Each indicator pulsed with data that defied everything the Federation thought it knew about social engineering. On Nexar Prime, the integration of Dalarian war refugees using human methods has resulted in a 47% increase in agricultural productivity and the development of 3 entirely new technologies. On Kepler Station, mixed human-alien refugee communities have created the most advanced sustainable energy systems in Federation space. On Altair 7, Morvex's voice trailed off as he studied the data. Even after months of reports, the numbers still seemed impossible. Admiral Voss of the Corvothian fleet interrupted the silence. "High Chancellor, With respect, we need to address the larger implications. The humans have effectively made refugee status desirable. Our intelligence reports indicate that populations on war-torn worlds are specifically requesting relocation to Earth or human-assisted programs rather than traditional Federation resettlement. The implications hung in the air like charged particles. For centuries, the Federation had managed refugee crises through containment and gradual relocation to marginal worlds. It was efficient, cost-effective, and maintained social stability. Now humans had demonstrated a completely different approach that not only worked better but created economic and social advantages for host populations. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Thane, the former Zalari captain, who now held a seat in the Federation government thanks to Earth's sponsorship, we should examine why the human approach succeeds where our capted traditional methods fail. On Earth, the original Zalari settlement had grown into something that defied classification. New Damascus, as the residents had named it, was no longer a refugee camp or even a settlement. It was a thriving city of 60,000 inhabitants, 40,000 Zalari, and 20,000 humans who had moved there specifically to be part of the integration experiment. Dr. Sarah Chen, now Director of Xenological Medicine at New Damascus Medical Center, was conducting her morning rounds when she received a priority communication from the Federation Council. The message was brief but momentous. The Federation wanted to send a study team to Earth to document human integration methods for galaxy-wide implementation. Dr. Chen, the holographic image of High Chancellor Morvex, said, "The Federation formally requests permission to establish a permanent research facility on Earth. We need to understand how your species achieved what our best social scientists considered impossible." That afternoon, Chen met with the other members of what had become known as the Integration Council, the mixed human Zalari leadership group that governed New Damascus. James Morrison had been elected as the city's first mayor, serving alongside Zalari co-mayor Vex, who had transitioned from communications officer to municipal leader. "They want to study us like laboratory specimens," grumbled Dr. Robert Kim, who now served as Director of Cooperative Engineering. "Next thing you know, they'll want to transplant our methods to worlds that don't understand the underlying principles." "Maybe that's the problem," suggested Professor Elena Vasquez, who had established the galaxy's first interspecies agricultural institute in New Damascus. "They're looking at our methods instead of our motivations." Mayor Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "The Federation Council is trying to reverse engineer compassion like it's a technology they can install anywhere." Captain Thane, participating via hologram from his office at Federation headquarters, offered his perspective. "The galaxy is changing faster than the Council anticipated. Word about Earth's approach has spread through unofficial channels. Refugee populations throughout Federation space are demanding what they call the human treatment." The data supported Thane's observation. Social media networks that transcended planetary boundaries had spread videos and testimonials from Zalari refugees describing their life on Earth. The contrast with traditional Federation refugee programs was stark and embarrassing. Traditional refugee camps provided basic survival needs, but little else. Earth provided opportunities, dignity, and genuine partnership. Traditional programs isolated refugees from host populations to prevent cultural conflicts. Earth created intentional integration that benefited everyone involved. "There's something else," Thane continued, his expression grave. "The Korvac Empire has taken notice. Their intelligence reports suggest they're reconsidering their expansionist strategies because refugee populations are no longer fleeing in desperate panic. They're making informed choices about where to seek sanctuary." The implications were staggering. For generations, the Korvac had relied on the chaos and desperation of refugee crises to recruit soldiers and workers from displaced populations. Earth's integration model had inadvertently disrupted the Empire's primary source of military reinforcement. The Federation study team arrived 3 weeks later aboard a science vessel carrying representatives from 47 different worlds. Leading the team was Dr. Zane A. Correll, a Varlosian sociologist who had built her career studying interspecies conflict resolution. Dr. Correll expected to document a set of administrative procedures that could be replicated elsewhere. Instead, she found herself studying something much more fundamental: a complete reimagining of how different species could coexist. Her first interview was with Maria Santos, a human teacher who worked in New Damascus's Integrated Education Center. The facility was unlike any school in Federation space. Human and Zalari children learned together from teachers of both species, using curricula that incorporated knowledge from both civilizations. Dr. Coral, Maria explained as they watched a mixed class of 8-year-olds working on a mathematics problem that combined human numerical systems with Zalari geometric concepts. I think you're asking the wrong questions. What do you mean? You want to know what procedures we followed to achieve integration. But we didn't follow procedures. We followed principles. After, Maria gestured to the classroom, where children were helping each other understand concepts that transcended species boundaries. Look at them. They don't see Zalari children and human children working together. They see their classmates helping each other with homework. But surely there must be systematic approaches you can document. Dr. Coral, Maria interrupted gently, what if I told you the most important integration tool we use is something you can't put in a manual? What's that? We assume the best about each other. When a Zalari parent suggests a different approach to education, we don't automatically think they're criticizing our methods. We think they might have something valuable to teach us. When cultural misunderstandings happen, we don't assume malicious intent. We assume good people are trying to figure out how to live together. Dr. Coral found similar responses throughout New Damascus. Human engineers spoke about Zalari architectural principles as if they were gifts rather than foreign impositions. Zalari farmers described human agricultural technology as collaborative tools rather than replacements for traditional methods. The breakthrough moment came during Dr. Corell's interview with 10-year-old David Kim and his best friend, 8-year-old Zalari child named Flux. Dr. Corell, David said with the matter-of-fact wisdom of children, why do adults make everything so complicated? Flux is good at pattern games, and I'm good at building stuff. So we help each other. It's not hard. But don't you notice that Flux looks different from you? Both children looked at her with the confusion reserved for adults who ask obviously silly questions. So? Flux replied in accented but clear English. David's hair is black, and mine is blue. His skin is brown, and mine is silver. But we both like ice cream and hate mathematics homework. Dr. Coral realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. A generation that had learned to see differences as interesting variations, rather than barriers to overcome. That evening, she sent her preliminary report to the Federation Council. The human integration model cannot be replicated through procedural implementation because it is not based on procedures. It is based on a fundamental philosophical premise that diversity strengthens communities rather than threatening them. The response from Federation headquarters came within hours. Explain how to teach this philosophy to established civilizations. Dr. Corell stared at her communicator screen for a long time before responding. You cannot teach someone to believe refugees are opportunities, rather than burdens. You can only demonstrate the benefits and hope they choose to see. Meanwhile, the effects of Earth's example continued to ripple outward through galactic civilization. The planet Valos Prime had established its own integration program for refugees from the Sirius conflict, using modified human methods. The results were encouraging but not as dramatic as Earth's success. The difference, as Dr. Chen explained to a delegation of Valosian officials, was commitment. Valos Prime is implementing our methods as a refugee management strategy, she said during a video conference. That's not the same thing as what we're doing here. What's the difference? Asked the Valosian Minister of Social Services. We're not managing refugees. We're building a community. The Zalari aren't temporary residents we're helping until they can go somewhere else. They're permanent neighbors we're figuring out how to live with forever. The distinction was crucial. Worlds that treated Earth's methods as an improved management system achieved better results than traditional Federation approaches, but fell far short of Earth's transformation. Worlds that embraced the philosophical foundation, that refugees represented opportunities for mutual growth rather than problems to be solved. Created genuine integration successes. As Dr. Coral prepared to return to Federation headquarters with her final report, she requested one last interview with the person who had become the inadvertent symbol of galactic change. Captain Thane. They met in his former quarters aboard the original Zalari transport ship, which had been converted into a museum and cultural center. The ship itself had become a symbol of hope for refugee populations throughout the galaxy. "Captain Thane," Dr. Corell began, "do you realize what your people's arrival on Earth has triggered?" Thane smiled, an expression that looked different on him than it had 6 months ago. Then, he had been a military officer bearing the weight of his species' survival. Now, he was a leader helping to reshape galactic civilization. "Dr. Corell, when we landed here, we thought we were at the end of something. Our world was gone. Our culture was scattered. Our future was uncertain. We thought Earth was our last hope for simple survival. And now we understand we were at the beginning of something, not just for the Zalari, but for the entire galaxy. Humans showed us that refugees don't have to be tragic figures temporarily supported by charitable hosts. We can be partners in creating something better than either group could achieve alone." Dr. Corell's final report to the Federation Council was unlike any document in galactic political history. Instead of recommending policy changes or procedural implementations, she made a single suggestion that would transform civilization. The Federation should formally recognize that refugee crises represent opportunities for cultural and economic advancement rather than problems requiring management. This recognition should be accompanied by the establishment of integration partnerships between refugee populations and volunteer host worlds, with Federation resources directed toward supporting successful integration rather than maintaining temporary containment. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, the Federation officially acknowledged that diversity was a source of strength rather than a challenge to be overcome. Within a year, 17 worlds had established permanent integration partnerships with refugee populations. Within 5 years, the phrase refugee crisis had disappeared from Federation vocabulary, replaced by integration opportunity. The galaxy had discovered something revolutionary. When you treat people fleeing disaster as valuable partners rather than temporary burdens, everyone benefits. And it all began with 40,000 scared, tired people arriving at a blue planet whose inhabitants simply asked, "How can we help?" The paper crane that a young human girl had given Captain Thane still sat on his desk in his Federation office, a reminder that the greatest transformations begin with the smallest acts of kindness.